Hi, Oren Martin here at the Alan Chadwick Garden on the porch. Soon we'll be out in the trees, but let's look at this blackboard here. Deciduous fruit trees are grown to geometric forms. And the rationale behind tree pruning and training forms is it's all about sunlight management. There's two aspects of sunlight management. One is interception, that is, you want branches to go up and out and into the sun, a goodly number of them with good spacing that intercept sunlight, photosynthesize, make sugars, and grow the tree. That's very important. But the second component is infiltration, and that is you need light to get down into the core, the center of the tree. Naturally, sunlight doesn't move more than about 3 or 4 feet into the tree canopy. So you have to create a form, a shape that has good spacing both horizontally and vertically between branches that allows these alleys of light or shafts of light down into the core of the tree. So let's look at the board here. There are two basic tree forms, and I'm going to mostly emphasize the open center. The open center form and the modified central leader. If you look here and you imagine a cone, narrow at the base, a wide opening at the top, branches distributed within that form. That is the basic open center. If you flip that cone so it's wide at the base and narrow at the top, or maybe even more appropriately, you superimpose an isosceles triangle, 2 equal sides here. That is the modified central leader form. They're both good. They're completely different than one another, but they both allow shafts of light, alleys of light into the core of the tree. The open center does it by having essentially a big, wide, circular opening at the top. It's a sun cup. You fill your cup with light, you fill your life with fruit. The sun falls into the core of the tree again and keeps the fruit wood lively. So your goal with an open center tree is to create a wide circular opening at the top for sunlight to infiltrate to the core of the tree. It takes about 50 to 80% of the total 100% of the sun that falls from the sky striking a branch to make and maintain quality fruit buds. So it's all about light, sunlight, interception, yeah, but infiltration equally. Let's look at inverting that cone, or I think more appropriately, superimposing an isosceles triangle. Wide at the base, narrow at the top, and you can see I've drawn these arrows here. Your positioning of your primary scaffold branches is such that they're spaced both horizontally and vertically, so you allow these shafts of light into the core of the tree. So it's pretty simple, but it's really important to have your trees conform, as it were, with these accepted, proven research tree forms. And I think the open center is easier, simple by design, and thus easier to execute and be successful with. If you look at the two systems side by side, the open center and the leader, in a same size tree, the leader tree will be more fruitful. It has more fruit-bearing surface, but it is more complex and more exacting. This is my pseudo haiku. It's 13, not 17 syllables, and 2, not 3 lines. And so it's a pseudo haiku, but it goes like this. The more sunlight you intercept, the more fruit you get. So if you look at these two renderings here, these drawings, these were done by a student intern who was taking an internship for 5 credits, but didn't realize it till well into the quarter he needed a project. I sat him down in front of a bunch of trees, and he produced about 8 or 10 beautiful drawings. And the one on the left is a simple open center. There are 4 primary arms, but you see your strong wood, that's your major framework, the 4 major branches. It's structural. And the weak little flat wood off those primaries, that's your fruit wood. On the right is a modified central leader with all the bells and whistles. That is, there are training devices, the wooden spreaders, the beautiful cement weight, and the string and stake tie down. But this gives you an idea of the form of a central leader, a modified central leader. But you see down below 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 primary branches in a whorl or a circle around the trunk. They're spread equidistant from one another, and they are pretty good with their vertical spacing, again, to allow light down between the branches into the core of the tree for fruitfulness. So those are the first tier of this tree are the branches represented below the two wooden spreaders. And then you have a period on the leader where there are no appreciable branches, 1, 2, 3 feet. This is nothing, but it's something. It's called a skip, and it's a great avenue to get gobs of light into the lower portion of the tree, a skip. And then you have a second tier of branches, in this instance, 1, 2, 3, that are weaker, flatter, and shorter than the lower primary scaffold branches, and that's to keep that triangular shape in order, narrow at the top, wide at the base. And going straight up is the continuation of the central leader. So this is still conceptual until we step out and look at some real trees, but these are the two basic tree forms. On the left, the open center; on the right, the modified central leader. All right, we're off the porch, we're in the garden. We have an actual three-dimensional tree here. This is a fine, fine tree. This is a 15, 17-year-old modified central leader. It's a type of Macintosh, or really good early Macintosh, called Shea. This is a tree that's on a pretty vigorous rootstock, so if we didn't modify the central leader, it would probably be another 7 or 8 feet tall. But let's use it to look at the components of a modified central leader. The leader is the trunk. It goes from the ground up. You see this bend up here? We'll get to that as part of the modified. The central leader. The central leader tree is composed of a series of tiers of branches, and in this case we have 1 and 2. So let me point them out to you. In the lower tier we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 primary scaffold branches. A lower tier of branches, there could be 3, 5, 7, 9. It's just that they need to be well distributed horizontally. So you have these shafts of light into the interior of the tree and keeps the fruit wood lively there. A skip on the leader above this top tier, a top branch in the lower tier where there are no appreciable branches, and then a second tier of branches, in this case 1, 2, and 3. They're lesser in number and shorter than the lower branches to keep that pyramidal shape intact. And then this is the modified part of the modified central leader. You can see these stubs up here. A number of times I've just taken the leader, which went up another 7 or 8 feet, and whacked it back, and the response to that was it grew again, and then I did this. I took the leader and I bent it off like this. You see, I just tied it to the stake here. And then off of that bent leader, trees just want to grow in an upright fashion, so there was a number of shoots that went up. And then as you can see, I've trained them down with these cement weights here. So that's the modification in terms of the modified central leader. Not the easiest tree to form, but beautiful and productive. Okay, here we have an actual tree in the ground, not a drawing on the board. This is a beautiful tree in terms of being a quality tree. I could do a lot of different things with this tree, but I'm just going to make one big cut. Do not be shocked right now. And I'm going to train this tree to be an open center. I don't want a central leader. And I've created some possibilities here to have 4, 5, or 6 multiple leaders that are of equal vigor, that are well spaced around the tree. It's like this, like that, and like that, and like that, but there's still too many. You want to go with 2 things when you're forming a tree: branches that are moderately vigorous and of equal vigor. Like, you don't want a really strong branch and a really weak branch. So these are good enough, but still too many. Again, it's critical that I have good spacing between these branches to get light down into the core of the tree. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's lose this. And let's lose this. So I now have an open center tree that's composed of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 primary scaffolds. Here's a basic rule of pruning. It's counterintuitive. The harder you cut back a branch, the stronger and longer it grows in the next season. The prescription, as it were, for just planted trees is cut them back about half their length. and I'm cutting generally to an outward facing bud to continue the direction of growth. And I cut them back about the same. And having done that, I'm going to clean up my original cut here at a slight angle, and we're good to go. We're going to have more flow of water and nutrients through fewer outlets, and I fully expect to get 3-4 feet of growth off of each of these this next year, and then we'll come back and visit us a year from now. We'll prune it in year 2. There you go. Okay, this is essentially the same, no, this is exactly the same tree genetically as the one I just pruned. It's also a Cox's orange pippin. Fruit trees are asexually propagated. So there's only one Fuji apple in the world. There's only one Cox's orange pippin apple in the world. Of course, there are literally millions and millions of trees, but they're genetic replicates. So same tree, different form. I'm going to grow this to a modified central leader. You can see I've already tagged 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 primary branches here that I like, have good distribution horizontally and vertically, and then we'll prune the leader. So the first thing I'm going to do is thin the unwanted branches. So I just thin those branches. I cut them out at their point of origin here. And now I've got my desired, get rid of these cute little things here, not needed at the present time. Going to clean up the leader. Buds are pointers or directional arrows. So whatever the bud you prune to, whatever direction it faces, that'll be the resumption of growth. And this is what I want, up and out, up and out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pruned. And then I want to stimulate the central leader to grow up taller, maybe about this tall, 6, 7 feet. And next winter I will head it and form another tier of branches, and it will comprise the 2 tiers of my modified central leader tree here. And so I'm going to just prune this back like this. The anticipation is this bud will grow. A few buds here will try to break from dormancy, but I don't want a second tier of branches this low. It would shade immediately the lower tier, so I'll rub them out, grow it up like this, head it next winter, let some primary scaffolds below that cut next year form the second tier of branches, and there you have it. Okay, here we have a nice compact 4-year-old Hudson's Golden Gen apple that's grown to an open center. Let's look at the components of form. Again, it doesn't have one central leader, it has a number of multiple leaders. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And that's a good lead number, but there's good spacing, and I'm going to keep those. But we have quite a few branches that are overly vigorous, misplaced, etc. I'm just going to quickly do a little thinning to clean this form up. This is good. Anything that heads into the center of the tree will clog up the middle in terms of sunlight. Get rid of it. Again, these are thinning cuts where they're cut out at their point of origin. The expected response is nada. You don't have a bud, you don't have a branch to regrow. So this is fine in a preliminary manner, as is this, as is this. This is too much complexity. Too many branches of too great vigor, too close together. So for the sake of simplicity and form, let's thin that. This we can work with, we'll get back to it. As we move around the tree, one of these can stay, and I like the one that has more vigor. We're down here, I'm good. We're down there, I'm good. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 primary branches. There's still too much tree here. So I'm going to do a little thinning. This whole arm here is not wanted. Now I'm good. Now I'm gonna make a series of lesser cuts. And these shortening cuts, cutting into older wood, stop growth, not stimulate it. Cut slightly into 2-year-old wood. By doing this, it stops growth and causes fruit buds to form behind the cut. So I'm going to do a series of cuts like that, quickly working around the tree. Okay, so I have a very reasonable structure with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 primary arms. I would probably do a little training. I would spread this and move it just slightly there, equidistant from its 2 neighbors like that. Now I'm going to head the tips of each leader to get them to grow just a little bit. Not much. I want this tree to get another 2 or 3 feet taller, but that's it. I really want it to be a dwarf tree like this and like that. So, nice open center, sunlight into the core, good number of branches, pretty good spacing between them. Even on such a young tree, I have a bunch of lateral, flat, fruit-bearing arms here. I'm good. So here we have another open center. It's more mature, it's 7, 8 years old. An open center, again, with a nice wide circular opening, tapering at the base. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 primary scaffold branches. In some instances, like here, they fork a couple times, or here they Y or fork a couple times. It's just about filling space, but not overfilling space. I've already pruned this tree, and you can see its extent, and I've done some shortening and thinning on some of the lateral fruit wood, but this is a fairly productive tree. Let's look a little more closely at what a fruit bud might look like. Fruit buds are an older wood, 2-year-old and older wood, and they're basically fat, plump, pointed, and they protrude out from the main stem, as this does on a short shoot, or they could be just right on the stem. So you can look at a tree again and see fruit bud, 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 fruit bud. Highly productive run now. You can't carry 10 or 12 fruit there, but you carry 4 or 5, and you accomplish that by thinning in the spring. So there you go. I'm really happy with the form of this tree. We've been eating apples off it for a number of years. Looking forward to eating a whole lot of apples this next August, September when this Hudson's Golden Gem is ripe.